Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
And, today we're going to be tackling something.
Oh, yeah.
A subject that sparks a lot of curiosity, but also controversy.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
Tantra.
Uh-huh.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at some academic excerpts
All right.
on Buddhist Tantra. So,
All right.
yeah, we're going beyond the usual cliches here, right?
Yeah.
We're going to try to uncover, the real
Okay.
philosophical core of this practice.
Symbolism,
all of it, and its ties to yogic traditions.
It's true. Tantra does often evoke a certain reputation, especially when you think about its association with the more erotic elements of spiritual practice. But in this deep dive, we want to transcend those superficial interpretations, right, and go deeper.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when a lot of people, and myself included, kind of initially think about Tantra, you might imagine it arising from some ancient tribal practice, almost like a separate, less legitimate branch of spirituality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a really common misconception. And it really stems from how early scholars, especially during the colonial period, approached Tantra. And their interpretations were often clouded by their own cultural biases and a limited grasp of the tradition's depth.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like we're judging a book by its cover.
Yes.
Or by just one chapter and missing the richness of the whole work.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's really important to understand that both Hindu and Buddhist Tantra are intricately woven into ancient philosophical systems and yogic practices.
Okay.
So this is not some fringe movement.
Right.
This is a sophisticated system
Yeah.
that has evolved over centuries.
Really interesting. Now that we've kind of cleared up some of those misconceptions, what is Tantra really about? What are its core principles?
Well, at its heart, Tantra is about harnessing inner energies to achieve these higher states of consciousness.
Wow.
Think of it as a technology of the mind, utilizing practices like mantra recitation visualizations and yogic techniques to tap into a deeper level of awareness.
This concept of harnessing inner energies is really intriguing. How does that actually work in practice?
Well, Tantra is deeply rooted in this idea of macrocosm-microcosm homology.
Okay.
Imagine yourself as a miniature version of the universe.
Okay.
So everything that exists out there also exists within you.
Okay.
And Tantra helps you align those two worlds.
Wow.
Your inner world with the universal energy.
So by working on ourselves, on our inner energy, we're actually influencing the universe around us.
Exactly.
That's a powerful concept.
It is. And this is where the profound symbolism of Tantra comes into play.
Okay.
To truly grasp the deeper meanings of the practices we need to understand the language of these symbols.
Symbolism can be so intriguing.
Yes.
But often hard to really decipher what kind of symbols are we talking about here in Tantra?
Well, take, for example, the frequent depiction of the union of male and female deities. Now, this imagery isn't meant to be taken literally.
Got it.
It symbolizes the union of wisdom.
Okay.
Praja and skillful means upaya, which are two essential qualities for achieving enlightenment.
So rather than a physical union, it represents this merging of different aspects of consciousness within ourselves.
Precisely.
Interesting.
It's about integrating these seemingly opposing forces to achieve a higher level of understanding.
Okay.
Another example is the use of seed mantras or biha mantras.
Seed mantras. Those sound fascinating. What are they exactly?
Seed mantras are these seemingly meaningless sounds, but they actually act as blueprints for visualizing the intricate forms of deities.
Wow.
So by reciting these mantras, practitioners are engaging in a powerful form of mental and energetic training.
So it's not just chanting random sounds.
No.
There's a whole system of meaning embedded within these mantras.
Yes.
What are the deities themselves? Are they seen as literal gods in Tantra?
That's another key point. Tantra deities are not to be understood as literal gods in the traditional sense.
Okay.
They are embodiments of specific philosophical ideas or yogic principles.
Okay.
Think of them as icons of ideas.
Got it.
Each representing a specific aspect of the path to enlightenment.
Like archetypes or personifications of certain qualities?
Exactly. Take, for instance, the deity Chinnamasta, also known as Chinnamun Vajrayogini. She's one of the more striking figures in the Tantra pantheon.
Her name certainly suggests a powerful presence. What makes her so striking?
Well, she is often depicted as self-decapitated.
Oh, wow.
Holding her own severed head with blood flowing into the mouths of two attendant yogines.
That's a very powerful image, even unsettling. What's the significance behind such a depiction?
Well, it's connected to the three main energy channels or notches in the subtle body.
Okay.
Chinnamasta represents the central channel, and then her attendants represent the left and right.
Oh, wow.
And the blood symbolizes the yogic practice of activating that central channel to achieve a state of bliss and wisdom.
So it's like a visual representation of this complex yogic process.
Yeah.
Not meant to be taken literally.
Precisely. This highlights the depth and sophistication of Tantra.
Right.
It's not just about rituals or practices on the surface level. It's a system designed to transform consciousness.
Yeah.
Using this complex interplay of symbolism, energy work, and philosophical concepts.
It's making me reconsider my understanding of Tantra. It's far more profound than I initially imagined.
Yeah.
But with all this talk of esoteric practices and symbolism, how have modern scholars interpreted Tantra?
Right.
Have they been able to fully grasp its nuances?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us into some interesting territory.
Okay.
While there have been genuine efforts to understand Tantra academically, there have also been some, shall we say, misinterpretations along the way.
What kind of misinterpretation?
For instance, some scholars have overemphasized the erotic aspects of Tantra, sometimes to the point of sensationalism.
Right.
While Tantra does involve working with desire, the practices are far more nuanced and advanced than typically portrayed.
So there's a lot more to it than simply the erotic aspect.
Exactly. There's a whole system of yogic techniques and mental discipline involved that goes far beyond simple indulgence.
Okay.
It's like saying that a chef who uses chili peppers is only interested in making food spicy.
Right.
There's an art and skill that goes beyond any one ingredient.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And speaking of misinterpretations, we can't forget about the Neo-Tantra movements.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
Well, these are modern movements that have attempted to adapt Tantra for contemporary audiences.
Okay.
While some have genuine practitioners, others have unfortunately misappropriated and oversimplified Tantra practices.
It's like taking a complex, ancient recipe and trying to make a microwavable version of it. You might lose a lot of the original flavor and nutrients in the process.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Right.
Which is why seeking authentic teachings and guidance from qualified masters is so crucial if you're interested in exploring Tantra.
Right.
There's a depth and complexity to this tradition that can easily get lost in translation.
That's good advice. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've debunked myths.
Yes.
Explored the core principles of Tantra.
Yeah.
And even dove into its symbolic language. I'm already feeling like I've learned so much.
Right.
Now that we've laid this groundwork.
Yeah.
Can we explore specific examples of how Tantra symbolism operates in practice?
Sure.
Earlier you mentioned that some imagery, particularly around deities like Chinnamasta, can be quite intense.
Yes, the imagery can be powerful and even shocking at times.
Yeah.
But that's precisely what makes Tantra so fascinating.
Okay.
It uses these evocative images to convey these profound truths about the nature of reality and the path to enlightenment.
How do these images connect to actual practices?
Right.
What are practitioners actually doing when they're engaging with these symbols?
Well, let's revisit Chinnamasta.
Okay.
Remember we discussed how she represents that central energy channel in the subtle body? Well, the practice associated with her involves visualizing yourself as Chinnamasta, embodying her qualities.
So I'm picturing myself in a meditation posture.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on my breath or a mantra, I'm visualizing myself as the self-decapitated goddess.
Exactly.
Wow.
But it goes beyond just the visual. You're also engaging with the symbolism on an energetic and mental level, invoking the qualities that Chinnamasta represents.
Wow.
The severing of ego, the transcendence of duality, the activation of inner energy.
So it's a form of active imagination.
Yes.
You're not just passively observing an image.
Right.
You're embodying it.
Yeah.
And engaging with its deeper meaning.
Precisely.
Wow.
This is where the transformative power of Tantra lies.
Okay.
It's not just about intellectual understanding, but experiential realization.
Okay.
You're using these symbols as tools to shift your consciousness, break down limiting beliefs, and tap into your full potential.
I'm starting to glimpse how powerful these practices can be. But I have to admit, some of this imagery is still a bit disturbing.
Yeah.
Is there a risk of getting caught up in the darkness, so to speak?
That's a valid concern. And that's why approaching Tantra with the right guidance and understanding is crucial.
Okay.
These practices aren't for everyone and shouldn't be taken lightly.
So it's not something you just pick up from a self-help book.
Definitely not.
Or a weekend workshop.
Authentic Tantra requires deep commitment, a strong ethical foundation, and most importantly, a qualified teacher who can guide you through the process. It's a path of transformation, and transformation can be messy and challenging.
It's more like a serious martial art than a casual yoga class.
That's another great analogy. Just as you wouldn't try to learn advanced martial arts from a YouTube video, you wouldn't want to dabble in Tantra without proper instruction.
Right.
The risks are too high.
That makes sense. We've talked about the symbolism, the practices, the potential risks.
Yeah.
But what about the results?
Right.
What are practitioners ultimately aiming for with these intense practices?
Ultimately, the goal of Tantra aligns with many other spiritual paths. Liberation from suffering and the realization of one's true nature.
So enlightenment.
Yes.
Becoming a Buddha.
Exactly.
Okay.
But Tantra approaches this goal in a unique way.
Okay. How so?
It's not about renouncing the world or suppressing desires.
Right.
It's about transforming them, using them as fuel for the journey.
Like alchemy. Turning base metals into gold.
Exactly.
Wow.
Tantra is often called the path of transformation for this reason. It's about taking the raw materials of our human experience, our desires, our fears, and limitations, and transmuting them into wisdom, compassion, and ultimately enlightenment.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how Tantra is different from other spiritual paths that might focus on renunciation or detachment.
Right. Tantra acknowledges the power of desire.
Okay.
Of energy, of all aspects of our being. It's not about denying those aspects.
Right.
It's about harnessing them, redirecting them towards a higher purpose.
It's like instead of trying to dam a river, you're learning how to build a hydroelectric plant.
Wow.
You're working with the flow of energy, not against it.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Tantra so relevant even in our modern world.
Okay.
It's a path that embraces the fullness of human experience, both the light and the shadow, and shows us how to use it all as fuel for awakening.
This is really making me rethink my whole understanding of spirituality. It's not about escaping the world or denying our humanity, but engaging with it, fully transforming it from the inside out.
That's the essence of Tantra.
Right.
And that's why it continues to resonate with people from all walks of life, even centuries after its origins. It's a path that speaks to our deepest human longings, for connection, for freedom, for wholeness.
This is inspiring, but let's bring it back down to earth for a moment.
Okay.
We've been talking about Tantra in a very idealized way, but what about its actual history? Has it always been this pure transformative path?
That's where things get even more interesting. The history of Tantra is just as complex and multifaceted as the practices themselves.
Okay.
It's a story of transmission of adaptation, of both great wisdom and, unfortunately, some misuse and misinterpretation along the way.
Misuse and misinterpretations. It sounds like we're venturing into some potentially controversial territory here.
We are. But it's important to acknowledge that no tradition, no matter how profound or well-intentioned, is immune to the complexities of human nature.
Right.
So let's dive into this fascinating and sometimes challenging history of Tantra.
All right. Lead the way. I'm ready to uncover some more layers of this intricate tapestry. So we're diving into this history of Tantra, and I have a feeling it's not always going to be a peaceful meditation retreat.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin with such a long and complex story?
Well, I think it's crucial to remember that Tantra didn't emerge in a vacuum.
Okay.
It developed within these existing religious and cultural contexts, absorbing and adapting elements from various traditions.
Okay.
So to really understand its evolution, we need to look at the broader historical landscape.
So it's like a river that's been fed by many streams, carrying the essence of all those different sources.
Yes, and just like a river can change course over time, Tantra has undergone various transformations throughout history. It's been influenced by political changes, social movements, even interactions with other cultures.
It's almost like a living organism evolving and adapting to its environment.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And one of the most significant periods of transformation was during the colonial era, when Western scholars first began studying Tantra.
That's where those misconceptions we talked about earlier start to come in.
Unfortunately, yes. Many early scholars viewed Tantra through this lens, shaped by their own cultural biases and preconceptions.
They were like tourists visiting a foreign land, judging everything based on their own limited experience.
That's a good analogy.
Right.
They often misinterpreted or misrepresented Tantra practices, focusing on the more sensational aspects, while ignoring the deeper philosophical and spiritual context.
Drawn to the exotic and taboo, rather than trying to understand the tradition on its own terms.
And this led to a lot of misinformation and prejudice that unfortunately still lingers today.
Yeah, it's like that game of telephone.
Yeah.
Where the message gets distorted with each retelling.
Exactly.
And this distorted view of Tantra has had real-world consequences, hasn't it?
Absolutely. It has contributed to the marginalization of the tradition, the demonization of its practitioners, and even the misappropriation of its teachings for personal gain.
Wow.
So this isn't just an academic debate.
Yeah.
It's an issue that has impacted real people and communities.
So how can we separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak?
Right.
How can we discern what's authentic Tantra and what's not?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
But here are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay.
First, be wary of anything that promises quick fixes or magical powers.
Okay.
Authentic Tantra is a path of gradual transformation.
Right.
Not a shortcut to enlightenment.
So if it sounds too good to be true.
Exactly.
It probably is.
Second, look for teachers who have a deep understanding of both the theory and practice of Tantra. Okay.
They should be able to explain the teachings clearly and answer your questions honestly.
It's not just about charisma or popularity, but genuine knowledge and experience.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And finally, trust your intuition.
Okay.
If something feels off or uncomfortable, don't be afraid to walk away.
Right.
Your spiritual journey is your own.
Yeah.
And you deserve to feel safe and supported along the way.
Those are some great guidelines. It's so easy to get caught up in the hype or mystique surrounding Tantra, but ultimately it's about finding a path that resonates with your heart.
Exactly.
And helps you grow as a human being.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
We've journeyed from ancient symbolism to modern-day misinterpretations.
Yeah.
From the sublime to the well. Slightly disturbing. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on Tantra. It's definitely not what I expected, but it's been a fascinating deep dive.
It's been my pleasure to share this exploration with you.
Yeah. I encourage you to continue your own research and delve deeper into this rich and multifaceted tradition.
To our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Tantra.
Yes.
Remember, the journey of knowledge is ongoing, and there's always more to discover.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning it, and keep diving deep.